Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're talking about something huge, a seismic shift in the business world, and it's all being driven by artificial intelligence. We're going to look at how we build companies, what we actually value, and maybe most importantly, what happens when you can turn a simple idea into a real business almost instantly.
Just think about it for a second. The old way of launching a software company, you needed huge teams of engineers, a ton of money, and months, sometimes years of brutal, painstaking work just to get a product off the ground. And now, poof, that whole process is just compressed. A single founder with a good idea can use AI to spin up a working prototype in a matter of hours. The entire game has changed.
So what's really driving this incredible speed up? Well, it's not just some fancy new app or another productivity tool. No, we're talking about a completely new category of technology. It's called Agentic AI.
Okay, so when I say AI, don't just think of your standard chatbot. Agentic AI is a whole different beast. Think of it more like an autonomous employee. You give it a high-level goal, and it just goes to work, handling all the complex, step-by-step tasks to get it done. It'll write the code, sure, but then it'll also write the documentation, manage the whole thing on GitHub, push the updates. Literally while you're sleeping. And no, this isn't science fiction. The proof is rolling in right now.
Let's just look at the hard data for a sec. There's this AI agent called Devin. They put it up against a standard test for software engineers, and it autonomously fixed almost 14% of the problems thrown at it. Now, you might see that number and think, that's not huge. But hold on. That's a huge deal. It's a state-of-the-art result. And get this, it's already outperforming junior human developers on these kinds of tests.
And this isn't just some lab experiment either. This is happening out in the wild. We're talking about Y Combinator, probably the most famous startup incubator on the planet. In their latest batch of companies, a full quarter of them, a full 25%, are saying their code is almost entirely built by AI. That's not a forecast. That is what's happening today with the next wave of top startups.
And you know what they say, follow the money. There's this company, Thinking Machines Lab. Get this, they have fewer than 50 employees. They don't even have a product out yet. And they just raised a $2 billion seed round. So what does that tell you? It shows that the smart money, the big investors, they aren't betting on massive engineering teams anymore. No, they're betting on the idea and a small, sharp team that knows how to steer the AI.
Okay, so let's zoom out a bit. What happens to the whole economy when literally anyone can start a company this fast? Well, this doesn't just stop with startups. This sends huge ripples, massive ones, across everything.
All right, so this shift triggers some really deep changes. Let's break it down. First, you're going to see an explosion of tiny startups. But you'll also see a ton of them fail fast because the competition is just insane. Second, jobs. You'll see a rise of these solo founders who basically just hire AI agents, but that also means traditional jobs, coders, designers, they're going to feel the squeeze. Then there's intellectual property, which gets, weird. You'll get a flood of patents, which might mean the only thing that really sets you apart is your brand. And for us, as consumers, the cost of digital stuff is probably going to plummet. But here's the catch. There's a hidden trap in how we even measure all this. Think about it. Our usual economic scorecards, like GDP, they're built to track big, stable companies. They're just not set up to measure this crazy churn of new companies popping up and disappearing. So policymakers could look at the numbers and think the economy is stalling out, when really, there's this incredible, chaotic energy bubbling right under the surface that they're just not seeing. So, with this completely new landscape, the old rulebook for success, you can pretty much toss it out the window. We need a whole new playbook for companies, for governments, and for every single one of us in the workforce. Okay, so if you're a big company, your old advantages are just vanishing. That huge team of coders you're so proud of, your first-to-market strategy, it just doesn't mean as much when a competitor can literally copy you over a weekend. So the new moats, the things that actually protect you, are different. We're talking about things AI can't just copy, like unique data that only you have, a real community and brand that people trust, and even locking down access to the raw power, the energy and compute that runs all this AI. So if you're a leader, you've got to move on this like yesterday.
Number one, you have to take a hard look at your business and ask, what parts of this can an AI just do now? What's a commodity? Number two, go find or build your tribe. Acquire those niche communities because you can't clone loyalty. And number three, you have to get these prompt-to-production systems working inside your own company. If you don't, you're just going to get left in the dust. And it's not just companies. Governments have a massive part to play in this. To stay competitive, they got to make it ridiculously easy to start a business. Like, imagine just typing a single prompt to register your company. Done. Then they need a smarter way to handle intellectual property, to sort through all the noise from this flood of new ideas. And finally, taxes. You need a simple tax system designed for all these new one-person shops and micro-businesses.
So what does this mean for our jobs, for the labor market? Well, it's creating this skills barbell effect. It's really interesting. On one side of the barbell, you've got a huge surge in demand. We're talking like 40% for what they're calling orchestrators. These are the people who can think up products and guide the AI. But on the other side, demand for those middle skill roles, the people who just execute, coders, designers, it's shrinking. The middle is getting hollowed out.
So what does this all boil down to? What's the big takeaway here? It's a fundamental flip in what we as an economy actually value. We're shifting from valuing execution to valuing concepts. Think about it. When building something is no longer the hard part, what's left? What becomes the most precious thing? The idea, the original concept. There's a quote from the source that just nails this. It says, when anyone with a browser can summon armies of tireless software agents, ideation becomes the main factor of production. So the takeaway is pretty clear. The winners in this new world, the societies, the businesses, they're going to be the ones who lean into this. They'll be the ones who make it super simple to launch a company, who update their laws for an age of ideas, and who make sure everyone can get their hands on the computing power to make it all happen. And that really leaves us with one last big question. A question for you, for me, for all of us to chew on. In a world where execution is basically free, where you can build anything you can imagine, what is your most valuable idea?